Do you make over $787,000 a year? If not, then I wouldn't be surprised. In fact, 99% of Americans do not. The average salary for an American worker is $63,000 a year, according to SoFi. And while the 1% continue to increase their wealth, wages have largely stagnated over the past 50 years for the 99%. Despite having the largest economy in the world, the United States has some of the worst income inequality of all developed countries. The financial hardships of the 99% can only be solved through societal effort, policy reform, and personal discipline. My life experience is probably familiar to many other young people. I had a relatively comfortable upbringing, but I've certainly experienced financial hardship as an adult. After high school, I went to college because that's what I was always told to do. But all I ended up with was $25,000 in debt and mental health issues. The best job I've had has been as an Amazon warehouse worker, where despite making 2.5 times minimum wage, I still can't afford a place to live. In fact, my salary puts me slightly above the federal poverty income guidelines, which means I make too much to take advantage of many government assistance programs. Many times I've laid in bed agonizing about how I'll pay a medical bill, fix my car to get to work, or handle some other emergency. When bad men combine, the good must associate, else they will fall one by one. This quote by Edmund Burke exemplifies the need to come together and fight back against injustice. Many protest movements, boycotts, and strikes throughout history have led to more equality, increased wages, and better working conditions. Had these ordinary people not organized to put pressure on those in power, whether it be the government or corporate interests, which are often one and the same, their situation would not have changed. In fact, in a free market economy, often the only thing keeping things at least somewhat affordable is public pressure. Without sufficient workers, companies cannot be run efficiently, even if at all. An example of an effective recent strike was the East Coast dock workers strike, which only ended after 3 days because they secured a 62% tentative wage increase. Pressure works, and it is imperative that we as a society use it. It is also important to band together when we can and support each other. The strategy of divide and conquer has been used to effect for centuries, be it in politics or war. Many of the same rhetoric has been used today to demonize minorities and immigrants that was used a century ago. And yet vilifying them has served no one's interest but those at the top to distract us from the real issues. We must stand up for each other and help us up when we get knocked down. After the failures of Republican leadership to mitigate and later recover from the Great Depression, the country elected Franklin Delano Roosevelt as president in 1932. Through the implementation of his New Deal policies, millions of Americans were lifted out of poverty and put to work building infrastructure that we still use to this day. Social safety nets were established to ensure more of the population had basic living standards. After just one term, this was the result of FDR's leadership, the largest presidential landslide in history. However, in the years following the post-World War II era, income and living conditions for the 99% have stagnated or even reached worse levels. For instance, the cost of living continues to increase beyond inflation, yet the minimum wage has stayed at $7.25 since 2009. Many bills to raise it have failed in Congress, yet even if they were passed, it still might not be enough. According to CNBC, the living wage for the American citizen is $45,000, which works out to roughly $21 an hour. However, a $15 or $17 minimum wage would at least be a good start. This is something that would immediately have a positive impact on millions of Americans. Another policy that needs reform is our tax code. We need stricter laws on corporations to make avoiding taxes harder and increase the penalties for doing so. We also need lower taxes on the middle and lower class, and higher taxes on the 1% so everyone is paying their fair share. In addition to tax reform and higher wages, it is important to reduce commodification. This means lowering the price or even eliminating the cost of things that should be basic needs. such as housing, healthcare, and food. We need a new deal. This can be achieved through legislation such as Medicare for All, a New Deal-esque housing construction program, and government-provided food programs for any who need it. Another priority is offering lower-cost education, which benefits the company in many ways, ranging from more tax money due to higher wages and birthing more innovation. So you might be asking what you can do to combat the financial hardships of the 99%. Well, considering you are most likely experiencing them, one of the most important and often overlooked things that I would recommend is to live a healthy lifestyle. Healthcare hasn't gotten any cheaper, and it probably won't in the near future. By cutting out harmful vices such as drinking and smoking, you can save money in both the short and long term. I can speak from experience that while both may make you feel good for a few hours, the damage caused will just lead to problems down the line. Learning to cook is both rewarding and generally leads to a cheaper and healthier diet. Pay attention to your mental health. Personally, I can attest that leaving this often overlooked part of fitness often leads to issues down the road. And it affects all aspects of your life. Something as simple as daily meditation can bring massive benefits. Another action I would recommend is to take advantage of government programs. Something relevant to most students is to submit your FAFSA. It's basically free money. If you lost your job or can't work due to disability, apply for financial assistance. There's no shame in getting help if you're struggling. Finally, despite the commodification of many things in our society, there are still things that are still free. Unfortunately, in many cases, the less money you make, the more you need to know. Resources such as a library are free, and all you need to do is get a library card. If you don't have a computer, you can use one there. You can research subjects such as cooking, budgeting, and exercise, etc. Speaking of exercise, a gym membership may be out of reach for some, but in many places in this country, going for a walk is still free. And finally, try to stay informed and vote for candidates who actually have your best interests in mind. Our modern political climate is rife with propaganda and misinformation, so try to learn to recognize it and seek out unbiased news sources. America is a country that should belong to all of us, whether that means achieving a comfortable standard of living, paying our fair share in taxes, or owning its past mistakes. Through the actions of ourselves, our government, and society as a whole, we can make all life easier for everyone and less expensive. Despite how difficult some of them may seem, the solutions that I've provided are achievable if we work towards them. As the playwright John Hayward once said, Rome wasn't built in a day, but they were laying bricks every hour.